Okay, so the clocks have gone back, the leaves are falling off the trees and winter is fast approaching, but that doesn't mean you need to put your fishing kit away. There's still plenty of fish to be caught while the temperatures are dropping. And in this video I'm going to show you a few little tips that will keep that float going under throughout these colder months. Okay, so the winter time is actually my favourite time of year for fishing. I absolutely love it. When those temperatures drop, I just love the fishing. It's a little bit more finesse. It's just lovely fishing. So there's no need to put the kit away. You can still pick and choose your days to go fishing. There's plenty of fish still to be caught throughout the winter. And this brings me nicely onto my first point, and that's about venues. Now, if you're going to go and sit on a massive gravel pit that's gin clear, you're going to be struggling. Let's be honest, that is just not the best course of action. But there's plenty of commercial fisheries out there, small venues where there's plenty of F1s, plenty of small carp, plenty of silvers, and those are the places to head to for winter action. There's always plenty of bites, there's plenty of fish feeding, and those are places where, let's be honest, you're going to get your string pulled and catch a few fish. So for me, tip one is all about venue choice. Think carefully about where you want to go fishing and look for those smaller, more intimate venues with a good stocking level, and you'll catch plenty of fish. Now in the winter, it's important to sort of realign our expectations a little bit from what you're going to get from your day's fishing. There's still great sport to be had. We're catching loads of fish here today, for instance, but it is a little bit more toned down than what it is from the summer. But as long as you're going into your session with the right mindset, that you're not going to catch as many fish as you are in the summer, then you can still have some great days fishing. And in fact, it can be even nicer because like catching big silvers, F1s is really enjoyable when you find that kit down, nice light elastics, which we'll show you in a little bit, and the fishing can be beautiful. So just point number two, remember it is winter, fishing is going to be a little bit harder, but there's still enjoyment to be had. Now location is pretty much paramount in the winter, and fish will be quite tightly shoaled in areas, but there are still spots where you've got to look for throughout the session and throughout the time of year, and it kind of depends on the weather a little bit as well. Today, for instance, it's nice and bright, that sun is actually quite warm, it's making the shallower parts of the swim lovely and warm. So in the winter, I think a lot of people just naturally assume that you're looking for deep water, and deep water is great and it can be fantastic, and it's probably like the benchmark of where you would fish. Look for the deeper areas of your swim. But when the sun's out on a day such as today, those shallow spots are actually really effective too, and I think that's really important. Features, dying weed beds, overhanging trees, marginal reed beds, that kind of thing are all like magnets for fish in winter. They just crave that cover. So any areas where there's an obvious feature are well worth exploring. And then likewise in open water swims, actually getting away from yourself a little bit, out into big bodies of open water. If you're on a snake lake, fishing out into the space away from the angler can be really effective. So location is really important in the winter, and unfortunately that doesn't mean just fishing a top kit and two in front of you like you would do in the summer. You might have to explore your swim a little bit, but look for those features, look for that shallow water and deep water, and also look for space between you and the next angler, because the fish naturally a bit shy in the winter and then we'll back away naturally. Winter fishing for me is all about finesse, and that means lightening down all of your kit. Pole elastics, drop down from those 10, 12s, 12, 14s of the summertime, drop down to 6 to 8, 8 to 10 at a push, but just lighten everything down. We want to make the most of every single bite that we get. And the same goes for lines and hooks as well. 011, 010, 012 at a push, they're the kind of lines that you want to be using at this time of year. It does make a big difference in the winter. Dropping that line down a bit, getting that extra suppleness in your rigs, it does make a difference in getting bites. The same goes for hooks. I like a 911 hook in the summer, nice and strong, but in the winter I'm looking to tone that down a bit, and I'll go for the 911 F1 or even the new Pellet hook, something with a little bit more finesse that allows me to present baits like maggots and 4mm pellets with a bit more finesse, because it does make a big difference. The same goes for floats. In the summer, I'm a big fan of 2.5mm or even 3mm bristles, but in the winter, those 1.7, 1.5mm tips really do make a difference in helping you spot those shy bites. As the water temperature drops, the fish's movements become much smaller, and actually seeing bites can be really tricky. And dotted down floats can make all the difference when it comes to actually seeing the bite in the first place. Like I like to fish with lots of show on the bristle, like plenty of bristle showing throughout the summer months. But when it comes to winter time, especially on these flat, calm days like we've got today, having your bristle as dotted down as you can see it, that's important. You've still got to be able to see it, but have it as flush to the surface as you can will catch you more fish. And that is especially true with fish like skimmers, F1s, roach. Delicate feeding fish really can give you the shyest of bites. And just a good tip is to get yourself some number 12 stots and just add them to your rig, just one at a time, until you get that bristle nicely down, and then maybe use a little bit of bristle grease just to like pop on the very end of the bristle, and that'll give you a little bit more to see, but it'll just hold up in that surface tension nicely. And dotted down floats can make all the difference between seeing those F1 bites and not. Now we'll discuss about bait choices in a little bit more detail, but I just wanted to mention about the power of ground bait in the winter. It really is a massive edge. And the reason is that you can get a lot of attraction in your swim without actually putting a lot of bait in. And I've had loads of success over the years by literally popping in like a marble-sized ball of like a sweet fish meal style ground bait. This is Skimmer's Dart that I'm using today, and it's a lovely soft sort of crushed expander based ground bait. Lovely sweet smell, but I think it's just the fact that you get so much attraction into your swim. Even with a tiny little ball like that, there's a lot of little bits going through the water. And putting them in, just literally a marble, every so often, it's a great way to kick your swim off and attract a few fish. And then just topping up regularly with them tiny balls. It's worked for F1s, it works for carp, it works great for skimmers. And it's just a great way to catch fish. Just combining that with either some pinkies or maggots is a great way to catch fish. So look for the sweet fish meal type ground baits in the tackle shop. Nice dark colour, and they're an absolute winner in the winter. Now, despite the temperatures dropping, pellets can still be a fantastic bait, but we have to just sort of work it a little bit differently to how we would do in the summer. In the summer, it's all about hard pellets, 6mm, 8mm, they're the pellets to use. But in the winter, softened 2mm, and then a 4mm expander on the hook is the way to go. It'll catch your carp, it'll catch your F1s, it'll even catch your skimmers. It's just a great way to start your session as well. It's very instant. If there's some fish feeding, you tap literally a pinch of micros in with a little pot on the end of your pole, and then present one of those 4mm expanders right on top of it. It's a great way to start your session. Like I say, you can literally get a bite from the first chuck you do that on some venues. Venues like Tunnel Barn and them kind of venues where there's a lot of F1s, you can literally just tap in 10 micros and expect a response pretty quickly. Like I say, pellets are still a fantastic bait, and there's some days where you can catch on pellets all day long. But I do think that pellets are better early in the session. When the fish are a little bit, they don't really want to feed, and you're just trying to trick an odd one onto your hook, pellets are an absolute great bet. But then, once the fish really start feeding, then there's only one bait for me, and that's maggots. They're good for silvers, they're great for F1s, and they're good for carp. You can feed very few, just a pinch through a little pot. You can feed them through a catty. You can throw them by hand on a shorter line. They're just an absolute winner. And I think the beauty of maggots is, obviously it's a natural bait, so the fish are more inclined to eat it. But I just think that the movement of the maggots triggers the fish to feed. The silvers being in your swim, eating the bait, creates a bit of activity in the swim, and eventually the F1s and the bigger fish just can't stay away. They can't ignore it all day. And that bit of activity will trigger them fish to feed. And it might be that later in the session, maggots come good and you can have a really good last 2 hours. But if I was only to pick one bait to go with in winter, it would be these beauties. Here we go, another fish. And if you want to catch loads more fish like this throughout the next few months, then I think you should consider subscribing to the Nufish YouTube channel. It's totally free. There's loads of great information on there and lots more to come. So press that subscribe button, press the like, and drop us a comment down below on what videos you'd like to see us do next. In winter, time of day can make a massive difference to what you're catching. You know, early in the morning is often cold. You know, you often get frost, really cold starts, and actually the start of the session or match can be really challenging. However, if you keep the faith and just be patient and frugal with your feeding, you will catch fish like at some point in the day. And it might be the last hour, it might be the last 2 hours, but they will feed at some point in the day. Like I say, if you're on a good venue with plenty of fish in it, they can't stay away forever. They just can't. They can't help themselves. They will feed at some point. So I think time of day is really important. So if you are going pleasure fishing, maybe don't get there till 12 o'clock and just fish for a few hours. It can make a big difference and you might catch fish straight away. But if you are going pleasure fishing and you're starting at 10 or 9 in the morning, maybe expect a slower start, but don't panic. Just keep that bait going in, small amounts, 10 maggots, just small amounts of bait. And eventually it might be 1 o'clock onwards, but you will catch some fish. And I think that can make a massive difference to your mindset. If you know that the fish will come later, and it, like I say, it might happen at 2:30, but it will happen. And I think having that confidence that it will happen will catch you more fish. When fishing with maggots, there's obviously a few different ways to feed. You can feed with a little pot, you can feed with catapult, or you can feed by hand. You could even feed with a big pot. And there's a place for all of them. And I think it kind of depends on a few different factors. I think if you're fishing a snake lake, for instance, I think that feeding by hand, sure, but mainly feeding with a little pot is pretty much the best way to go. Snake lakes, by their nature, are quite confined. You're fishing like into little areas of your swim, you're trying to be super accurate, and the pot really comes into it. However, if you are fishing a bit like what we've got here today with a bit of open water, it can pay off to be braver and actually loose feed with a catapult. This kind of lake, you kind of have to draw the fish to you. When you're on a snake lake, the fish are in front of you, they can't really get away from you, they're sort of hemmed in a little bit. But on a lake like this, they can naturally back away from you. And I think actually using the catapult, I don't mean like feeding loads more bait, but maybe just a bit more regular, 6 maggots, dead regular with a catapult, will pull those fish towards you. Might need a bit of patience, you might need to be just mindful that it might take a couple of hours, but actually loose feeding with a cat, it can be a real edge, especially for F1s, but again for roach, loose feeding can be massive. And the same goes for feeding by hand. I will always put a line in short, 5-6 metres, where I can throw maggots in by hand. You might only catch on it right at the end of the day, but you will catch on it at some point. And I think having a line where you can throw maggots in by hand keeps you busy because you're throwing in bait and you're keeping yourself active. It just does give you that option of having a big finish as well to your session. So there's a place for all three, but like I say, I think if you're on a smaller, more confined snake lake, stick to your pot. If you're on a slightly bigger water, then catapult and feeding by hand can be really important to drawing those fish in and making them feed. Now this can be especially true when the water gets clearer, the temperatures drop, and you get these like still days. And I think that's where fish hold up in features, and features can hold a lot of fish. You know, if you get a nice big tree, we've got one down here, down the edge here, all the fish can like ball up under them features. Now you can target it with a little bit of bread, you could like dob maggots, but you could just fish normally next to them, and you just cannot ignore features at this time of year. And you know, it could be something insignificant like a dying rush bed or something like that, or an overhang, but never ever write them off. Even if it's only 2 or 3 foot deep, always investigate, because there's bound to be a few fish hanging under them features, especially when the water, like I say, the water gets really clear like it can do in the winter. Like, those features can hold a large bulk of fish. Now this point follows on nicely from the last one, and it's all about shallow water. Now, you would naturally assume that all the fish will be in the deepest part of your swim. It's cold, that's where they'll sit. But sometimes that isn't the case. Now, there's 2 instances I've found over the years where shallow water can be where the fish are actually more comfortable. After a lot of rain, I fully believe that cold rain sinks to the bottom and the fish aren't comfortable there. But also days like high pressure days where you get a lovely bit of sunshine. Naturally then, shallow bits of water where that sun especially is hitting the water can be an absolute, literally a hotbed for the fish. And it can literally just be where all the fish are hanging out, right in the shallow water. So just like I said with the features, never ever write off shallow water. It could be something like 2 foot. I've caught them in 2 foot right in the middle of winter before, on the right day. On the flip side to that though, if it's like low pressure, windy, and the water's like stable or what have you, they can all be in the deep water, so just be mindful of that. The different depths can hold different fish, and this is especially true with F1s, and the more we do this kind of fishing, the more we realise that the air pressure has an effect on where the fish are happy to sit, and it does make a big difference. So the best way to go about it is to actually set rigs up in different parts of the swim, so cover your deep areas, cover your shallow areas, and the fish will be comfortable in one spot or the other. A really important tip is about taking your time with your peg. Now, naturally, things happen a little bit slower in the winter. You know, it might take a little bit longer for a swim to get going. It might just be, like I say, a time of day thing where they switch on at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock or whatever. So What is important is not to panic on a winter session and take your time with the water that you've got. So what I'm trying to get at is don't fill it in at the start. Don't put in 6 balls of ground bait on a snake lake. Just don't do it. Just take your time, work your way into your swim slowly. Small amounts of bait are best in winter, especially for F1s. Little bits of maggot, little bits of ground bait, small pinches of pellets are enough to get you a bite off F1s. And if you're not getting bites, you've kind of got to search your swim, but it's generally not a bait thing. By that I mean feeding more bait isn't going to suddenly change your fortunes. It's going to be a time of day thing. It's going to be maybe you're in the wrong depth of water. Maybe you've just got to be a bit more patient. So try all those things before you start filling your peg in. It really does make a difference. Just take your time with the water. Make sure you're just patient. Have a look around you, see if other people are catching, and honestly, it can make all the difference. And you can suddenly start catching and you haven't changed a thing. And I think that's just classic winter, that is. Fish will feed when they're ready to feed, and just keep it frugal, small amounts of bait. You can't blow your peg like that. Be patient, take your time, and they will have a feed eventually. So I think that is a massive tip, that is. Take your time with your peg and don't blow your peg apart before they start feeding. Now, the short pole is fantastic throughout the summer, but it can play a part in the winter as well. And again, it's later in the day when the fish are actually starting to feed. They will come looking for a bit of bait, and actually feeding a short line by hand all day can give you a really good finish to your session, and even just catch your fish throughout the day if it is the right day. So even though it's cold, and even on the coldest of days, I will always feed a swim, maybe 5 to 6 metres at the bottom of the near shelf. Loose feed it with maggots, just like I say, just keep it regular, keep it light, but keep it regular. And again, they will feed at some point on that short line. So just because it's cold doesn't mean you're not going to catch on that short pole. So it might happen, again, I keep mentioning this, it might happen in the afternoon, but it will happen. So don't give up on that short pole just because it's cold. Because finding certain depths is so important throughout the winter months, actually using the plummet and having a good search around is so important in the winter, even more so than in the summer. Certain swims have different features in them. There's shallow water to look for, looking for the deeper spots, looking for shallow shelves, looking for ledges that might hold fish naturally. It's so important. It is at all times of year to plumb up accurately, but especially like in the winter. Now, this swim, for instance, the deepest water is just slightly to my right at 13 metres. There's a lovely deep hole out there that's probably 1 metre and a bit wide. I've got to fish there. It's the deepest part of my swim. That's a lovely place to fish. Now, if I'd have just gone straight out in front of me, it's actually a foot shallower to my left, and if I hadn't searched, I wouldn't have found that deeper area that's slightly to my right. And the same goes to this edge. Where this tree is, there's a lovely slope, and then there's a lovely flat spot at the top that's 2 foot deep on top of it against that feature. And I found that using the plummet, and it really is important. Just take your time. You can either use a 30 gram, but more often than not, I'm actually using a 15 grammer. Throughout the winter. Makes minimal disturbance. You've got a nice light rig, a nice light float, and just dragging it around your swim and using that little light plummet to find the depth is so important. Fish can actually spook in the winter if you're dragging a massive plummet around, so that little 15 grammer is a little gem. It allows you to search that swim without actually spooking anything. So get yourself a little 15 gram plummet and take your time with it, because it can actually reveal some little fish holding spots that you might not see otherwise. Now, fish are cold-blooded, so when it's cold, the water's cold, the fish, their activity is just not there. And oftentimes, you hook a fish, a big F1, and it'll come wallowing in on the top. They're just not fighting like they are in the summer. So you have to drop your elastics down, otherwise you'll end up bumping them. You can be shipping back and they just fall off. It can be a nightmare. So I actually go a little bit opposite to how I do in the summer, where I try and step things up in the summer and try and land them a bit quicker and what have you. Whereas in the winter, I'm happy to actually drop it below where I think I should need it. So 8 to 10, for instance, 8 to 10 zip is a great winter elastic. It's really good. But actually, I prefer to use a 6 to 8, which is a much lighter elastic. Loads of it comes out your tip, but when you strike into a fish, it stays nice and calm in your peg. You can ship it back. It doesn't come up on the top. It just follows it in like a dog on a lead, and then you can net them no problem. They're not fighting hard, so you can get them out no bother on this 6 to 8. But I just think that the benefit of keeping your peg nice and calm with this light elastic will pay off in the long run. So keep it nice and light, but that 6 to 8 is an absolute winner, especially for F1s. It's just a beautiful smooth elastic, and like I say, it'll keep those small hooks in place absolutely no problem. So there you go, some nice tips to help you catch more fish this winter. You don't need to put your gear away till spring. Keep going, there's plenty of good fishing to be had, especially if you pick beautiful days like this. So get that gear out, get fishing, stay fishing, support your local tackle shop, and don't forget to like and subscribe.